Thank you all for coming. We promised you a practical evening. So during the next couple of hours or so, we are going to, as well as me talking about Heart and Business and the principles behind it, going to actually physically demonstrate some of the things we do. And we're going to start with that. In the couple of demonstrations, we don't have that much time tonight, so they're going to be really kind of short flavours of what we do. So just to kind of imagine what we do, imagine that being expanded into a bigger space. But just in like 15, 20 minutes, we're just going to give you a taste of some of those things, so you come away with a flavour. So at that point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Eudora, who's going to lead you through the first exercise we're going to do.
Firstly, just thank you that you're all here, because I'm sure you've all had very busy days, and it's the winter is drawing in, and I'm sure most of you would rather be home than be here. So thank you for coming. And what I'd like you to do is to let go of your busy days. So this is the movement part of the evening. So what I'd like you all to do is stand up, move the chairs backwards, and to find a space for yourself somewhere in the room. Okay, so just find a bit of space. If you, I would suggest you actually move away from behind chairs and just find a bit of, to move all the chairs right back against the wall and find a bit of space for yourself. Okay? So this is the movement part, and you may feel a bit awkward with this part. Just forget about how you feel. If you feel a bit awkward about it, just let it go. And what I'd like you to do is just shake and use your voices a bit and go. Move your knees and your shoulders a bit, and just let go of your day. Think about how you got into work today. If you were at work, think about, the travel, the transport. Just let it all go. And just breathe. With your shoulders a bit back, roll them back. Big sigh, let it out. Okay, and now what I'd like you to do is your feet shoulder width apart. So you're standing really firmly on the ground. I'd like you to close your eyes. Just let go. And just connect inwards into yourself. And just reflect on the day that you had, and just let it go. Reflect on the journey, the transport, perhaps you were running late, the anxieties, the things you've got to worry about, your to-do list. Let it all go. Just be present with who you are right now, and just breathe. Don't forget to breathe. And as you're doing that, just check in with yourself, check in with your heart, how you're feeling, and think of 2 words that best sum up how you're feeling right now. The first 2 words, don't overanalyze, just let them come. And in a moment, I'm going to get you to move around. And what I ask is that there's no chatter, not too much interaction. I ask you to just share those 2 words with somebody else, and I'll explain how to do that in a moment. So, from closing your eyes in a moment, I'd like you to slowly open your eyes, but not fully, just softly. Walk around the room and find somebody that you feel naturally safe with, and stand in front of them, and from that place look at them in their eyes, and then you'll be sharing your 2 words. So if you just go and do that now. So just find somebody's soft eyes, stay connected with yourself, no chatter please, so no chatter. And what I'd like, so I'm saying no chatter please. I'd like the person with the shortest hair to share their 2 words, please.
That's me. You heard them already.
And then the person with the longest hair to share their 2 words. And please don't chatter. And then when you've done that, if you move on to somebody else. But again, please stay away from the chatter and just stay connected to yourself. So the next person you meet, if you look at them in the eyes, So again, the person with the shortest hair, if you share your first two words, your first... Okay, and then the person with the longest hair, they share their two words. Okay, and then if you move on to the third person, and if you just stand in front of the third person, and this time if you're just silent, please. Yes. So if you find the third person and you just stand in front of the third person in silence, please. So please stay away from the chatter. Stand in front of the third person and close your eyes. Okay, and from that silent place, I want you just to remember what it was like. So eyes closed, please. I want you to remember what it was like being a child. What your life was like when you were a child. What did you enjoy doing? What was fun about being a child? What were your favourite games, the favourite things that you enjoyed doing? When you found what that was, what you really loved doing as a child, I want you to open your eyes, and again, this time the person with the longest hair to start, and say, this is what I enjoyed doing as a child.
Alright, so making
Okay, and stop. Okay, thank you. And now I'd like you to swap around and the other person to share. Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. And now I'd like you all to close your eyes again. Thank you. So if you all close your eyes again, let the chatter go. Thank you. Okay, so closing your eyes, connecting back inside yourself, letting go of the childhood, and being now in the present day. And imagine a day that you've suddenly, unexpectedly got free. There are no to-do lists, all the laundry has been done, you don't have to do any housework, there's no work to do, but a whole day ahead of you, nothing planned. Can you imagine what you would most like to do? What would you love to do with that day, that free day? So there's no responsibility, nothing you need to do. What would you love to do? What would a perfect day be for you? What activity would you love doing? Just connecting to that. If you can, go a little bit deeper and think about why. Why do you love it? And then I'd like you to share again. So this time the person with the shortest hair to start, and then swap around when you've done that. Thank you. And if you haven't swapped around, time to swap around. Okay, and thank you. Now can you close your eyes again? So stop the chatter and close your eyes again. close your eyes, stop the chatter, and that's it. And if you connect back into yourself. And this time, we're not in the present day, we're in the future. A little maudlin, you're on your deathbed. You're looking back at your life. You know that this is the end. You've lived your life, a long, hopefully fun, interesting, exciting life. You're looking back at the life that you've led. What are you most proud of? What was your biggest achievement? What did you love the most about your life? Just think about one thing. What was your achievement? What were you proud about? What did you love the most? And when you found that answer, again, to share. So this time the person with the longest hair, and then swap around. Okay, and thank you. So if you close your eyes again, so let go of the chatter and close your eyes again. So now if you just close your eyes again, let go of the chatter. Close your eyes again. Connect with yourself. Let go of the chatter. Okay, so close your eyes. Just connect with yourself. And with those 3 questions that you've just been asked and the exercise where you had to sort of move and connect with yourself, just reflect on what you've just experienced and what that felt like. Just breathe into that. Deep breath. Let it out. Okay, and in a moment I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and find a way to say thank you to your partner and find your seats again. But just take a moment before you do that. Okay. So if you just say goodbye to your partner and find your seats.
Seats, that would be fantastic. I'm Andrew, by the way. I'm not sure I introduced myself at the beginning. Maybe you did. Jennifer, where's she gone? So, how do you feel after that? So there's 2 aspects to that process. The first is the kind of movement around the stretching and then the 2 words. And we call that a check-in. How many times have you arrived at a meeting full of thoughts, I've had a row with my wife, or, I've just, got bad, somebody's crashed into me on the way in, or the tube was late. And I've experienced myself in meetings with that stuff playing over in my mind over and over and over and over. And someone like Darshit is talking away in the meeting, and I'm not hearing anything. So the idea of that process is just to try and let go of some of the busyness of the world. So we start all our meetings with that sort of process. And the second thing is a process called alignment coaching, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. So, our mission as Heart in Business is to inspire and support companies to put people and our planet first and trust profit will follow. Okay, so that's what, and I'm guessing because you've come to an event built under conscious capitalism and heartfulness, you're reasonably supportive, or think there's some merit in that mission. And I've set up Heart in Business because I fundamentally believe that this is a much better way of doing business than the way that most businesses are run these days, which is short-term profit-focused. And I heard somebody talking the other day about, people talking about focusing on the next 3 months, three weeks, even 3 hours, which is slightly exaggerating the focus we're in. And there's quite an appalling statistic. There's a Gallup study which was done a few years ago, which interviewed 125,000 people worldwide about their experience in the workplace. And the headline was that 87% of people interviewed were emotionally disconnected from their work. So only 13% of people in the world, across all organizations, could say they were emotionally connected. And of the 87 that are disconnected, about 60 odd are somewhat disconnected and 20-something% are severely disconnected, as in they actively hate being at work. So if you think about how much time we spend in work, and the fact most people on the planet work in organizations of some description, that's a really horrific statistic. And I think that helps explain the level of discontent and disharmony that exists in the world at the moment. That's across the whole world. If you look at, there's a report by the Churchill Foundation, which interviewed off the record about 60 CEOs and leaders of senior civil servants and leaders of public sector bodies in this country. And basically it's called Thinking the Unthinkable. And what those leaders are saying off the record, because only Paul Pullman from Unilever was the only person who would go on the record, they're basically saying the system's not working, it's chaos, the speed of change is too quick, we can't keep up, we're exhausted. So this is the leader saying this. So you're getting it at both sort of levels. And further, so Archbishop Vincent Nicholas, the Catholic Archbishop of London, and you'd wonder, well, what's he got to do with all of this? He, some time ago, was looking at the problems of the world, and he looked to see what group of organizations in the world could make the biggest difference. Politicians, NGOs, and he concluded that business was actually the force that could be, the sort of organization that could be a force for good. And he set up a thing called Blueprint for Better Business, which some of you may have heard of. So there's a load of supporting factors. The other thing that in the research I've been doing in the last couple of years and the experience I've had is that this way of doing business is actually, not only is it better for the people who work in the company, the people who run the company, the communities, the environment, but actually it's better for shareholders. And every piece of evidence, and I'll show you some a bit later on, says this is actually more profitable in the long term. So chasing short-term profits is not actually a good long-term profitable strategy. So let me give you a little bit of background to me, how I got to this place. I ran, after starting life as a management trainee and a manager at Mars, I ran a consultancy for many years with this guy over here and a few other people. And I, about 10 years ago, started to get really disillusioned by how short-term profit-focused all our clients were. So we were working for people like BP, Marks and Spencer's, PepsiCo, all around the world. And I just felt there had to be a better way of running a business. So as you do, I decided to leave and buy a couple of supermarkets. And I bought 2 stores in North London, which we created, called Thornton's Budgeons. So Budgeons is a franchise. Some of you will know the brand. And over a period of time, we started to create what we call the community supermarket that really cares. And the idea was to have a business that was focused on the community, the environment, and people, rather than was just thinking about how much money can we make. So in that process, we did a number, and I could talk for 10 hours about some of the things we did. You'd be glad to know I'm not going to do that. But some of the things we did, we were the first supermarket in the country to stop charging for carrier bags, which we did nearly 9 years ago. And we had a farm on the roof of one of our stores where we grew fruit and vegetables called Food from the Sky, which we then sold downstairs, and grown by volunteers from the community who got to touch the soil and learn about food growing, and then we sold it downstairs. It was at the time the freshest, shortest food miles in the country, because it was 9 vertical meters from where it was grown upstairs to where it was sold downstairs. And that was in the Crouch End store. So along that journey, about 5 years ago, Crouch End was a pretty competitive place. There's a Tesco next door to us, Marks and Spencer's around the corner. And then Woolworths went bust, which has been, on the verge of happening I've been in this country for 30 years, so for at least 30 years they've been going out of business. But they did eventually. And Waitrose moved in next door. And we competed on for 3 years, but ultimately had to realise we couldn't keep losing money year after year. And that was the store with the farm on the roof. So sadly, the farm on the roof went, because I ultimately sold the store back to Budgeons because I couldn't keep on sustaining those sort of losses. But actually, Waitrose did me a huge favour. It didn't seem like at the time, because it was pretty difficult, as you can imagine. I put my heart and soul into both stores. And I also lived in Crouch End as well, so I was part of the community. But they did me a favour for two reasons. One, because it helped me realise that that I'm quite spiritual. I believe in a life purpose. I believe we're all here for a reason, every single one of us. And I realised that mine was about putting the heart back into business. And actually, it was this man here who, after selling the store, I decided to take a sabbatical because I was absolutely exhausted. And I was going off to India, and I met this guy in the South Bank 2 days before I went to India. And he just had a book published, and he just asked me this question: are you ready to write a book about your experiences in business? Because you do things kind of differently. And I said, yeah, it would be called How to Put the Heart Back into Business. And the title flowed off my tongue. I'd never even thought about writing a book to that point. And I kind of went off to India, and I then realised, actually, this is why I'm here. And while up to that I'd been trying to campaign to get supermarkets to do things better, use less energy, throw away less carrier bags, I realised there was a bigger picture to this. And the second learning came that I realised that in terms of how we worked with our own people before this happened, we didn't put enough effort and energy into that. A lot of our energy was outside into the community and the environment. So it kind of drove me to look deeper into how we can put more, what we now call heart, into Thornton's Budgeons. One of the things Steve Jobs said that you can often, you can't always make sense of where you're going, but you can join the dots up afterwards. And one of the reasons for forming Heart in Business was I've kind of experimented and played with being more heartful for the last 9 years, but in a fairly haphazard, random way. And Jim, who runs the store in Crouch at Belsize, will know some of the things we did were really successful, but some of them weren't particularly successful. So we've kind of learnt the hard way. And part of the aims of Heart in Business is to help share with other people the lessons we learned. The other thing that happened around the same time for me, around the time Waitrose opened, was I went on a sort of personal development journey of self-discovery, because I knew there was something missing in my life, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And I went on a whole series of workshops and tried all sorts of weird and wonderful things, some of which I'm prepared to admit and some of which I haven't. And in that, I really learnt about the importance of being more conscious, being more aware, and being truthful. Being really, really honest and truthful. And I learnt a really painful lesson because in my marriage, I was afraid of hurting my wife by telling her some of the things that I felt about our relationship. I ended up hurting her a lot more by leaving because I couldn't tell the truth. And I realised that afterwards. And I caused a lot of pain and a lot of personal regret to myself. But it really was a very hard lesson in truth-telling. And what we're trying to do in Thornton's Budgeons is creating an environment where we can be as truthful as possible to each other. And I ask each of you to reflect, and I could ask for a show of hands, but that probably wouldn't be fair, to say, truly, honestly, in your heart of hearts, can you say that you're entirely truthful with everybody in your life all the time? Because I'm guessing most people will say. So that's a real challenge. And that's the goal I'm aiming for in my work, in my personal life, with my family, with my friends, to always be truthful. Because I've certainly learned that it's far better to be truthful. Because if you have something that you're not sharing, it kind of gets into the energy and it festers. And that often explains, maybe you have a discussion with someone, and Erica, you and I are having a conversation, and suddenly I explode for some completely trivial reason. Like maybe at home I left the toothpaste cap off the toothpaste as a favourite one. That's nothing to do with the toothpaste cap. It's because I'm building up something I haven't told you about, and it's building up a resentment. So that's the importance for me of truth, be it in personal relationships and in a working environment. So having returned from my sabbatical, we set about in Thornton's Budgeons we ran a program called the Heart Program, which I'm not going to talk too much about today. But basically, it was about trying to get people, create safe environments for people to share more with each other what was going on. And as you'll see a bit later on when I show you some numbers, it actually had a really positive effect on our business. However, it wasn't sort of deep enough. And in fact, on the journey, I would reverse things, which is one of the benefits of hindsight. Things, we did things in a very haphazard, random order. around about a year ago, two things happened that sort of coincided. One was me realizing that while I was writing my book, Putting the Heart Back into Business, that if I was going to inspire and support companies to do this, I needed to form an organization. I couldn't do this on my own. So I kind of started to trawl through the various people I met through this personal journey of mine, personal development journey, that were involved in business, that were working with business, that had tools and techniques to help people be more aware and more conscious, and who got the idea of Heart and Business. And some of them are sort of sitting here. This is how we formed Heart and Business, effectively. And at the same time, and the universe is a wonderful thing in presenting opportunities. At Thornton's Budgeons, we were in a tricky place. So this time last year, an almighty great price war broke out. Even, I've been in the grocery trade for 30 odd years, and there's been price wars, but this is a price war beyond all other price wars. So we were sitting in a place where suddenly the well-heeled of Belsize Park actually started to be conscious of price, which they'd never done before. And as a small independent with a wholesaler that's a very small, we weren't exactly price competitive. And Anita here sits as one of my customers. So she's a very loyal customer, though. She didn't desert. So we were sitting we were 7% down, okay, on the previous year. Now, when you consider there's 4% deflation in the food market at the moment, so if your sales are minus 4%, it means you're selling the same amount as last year. Okay, so it's pretty, and of course, rent, wages, all the other costs are going up. So it was pretty unsustainable. So these two things collided in that I had brought these group of people together who had these tools because I felt they could be worked and they would help businesses to be more heartful. Thornton's Budgeons is the laboratory. So we basically put these tools into Thornton's Budgeons to experiment with them. We ended up calling the process the heart resuscitation process, which is about aligning people to their natural flow in life. It's actually incredibly simple when I say it like that. And there's two aspects. So the first is what we call alignment coaching. And that's what you saw Eudora demonstrate a little bit earlier. Okay, so you imagine that process just say you're on the board of a company and the whole board do that. And the whole board actually start to understand what they love doing. And you set yourself an aim that everybody in the organization, starting at the board, only does what they love doing. And that's all. Now I thought, well, there's always going to be a pile of let me say the word crap in the corner that no one wants to deal with. But actually that's never the case because we all have different skills. So if we were a board of a company, between us, we will have all the skills needed to run the company. And it is possible to get a company to a place where everybody's doing what they love doing. The second piece is the work that Nicholas does, which is called mission alignment, which looks at what people's motivations are, what their strengths, what their life purpose is, and even some of the kind of shadowy, unconscious stuff that they're not even aware of. And we have quite exciting this evening, for the first time ever, Nicholas is going to do a sort of live demonstration of this in about 15 minutes' time, 20 minutes' time. What we found by combining those two was some real insight in Thornton's Budgeons. And we worked with the leadership team, which is myself as the owner, Jim, who's the manager of the store in Crouch End, Belsize Park, who makes everything work. And then Shanti, who not only is a partner in Heart and Business, but she's also the finance and legal person. What we discovered, and I hope you don't mind, I'm going to share publicly while you're both here in the room, was that Shanti had an extraordinary insight and looked at things really differently to everybody else. So from her place, surrounded by all these numbers, she could see stuff. And she's going to tell us on video in a second about the experience of doing this. But she didn't have, she felt, I'm just the bean counter, I'm just the accountant. I don't have the confidence to stand up and share this. Jim also got a bit challenged sometimes, that when Shanti was pointing out, it was like, well, that's a criticism of my team. So having worked through this process, these two now meet on a weekly basis and they together set the priority. So there isn't a conflict. And Shanti has elevated and grown hugely in stature. And when I talked to Scott a few months ago on the phone, he said, what's happened to Shanti? She's kind of really grown and blossomed. I'm sorry if I'm going to embarrass you here as a person. For me, what I now do in the company is I do 4 things, and I love doing all of them. So I'm responsible for the vision of the company, I'm in charge of innovation, I'm the custodian of the customer, and I'm the conscience of the company. And that's all I do. And I can do that in a day a week, which means I get to spend 4 days a week working on heart and business. And basically the team, and there's quite a bunch of the team scattered around the store here, they are much more empowered, and they basically run the store. So that process is fantastic if you look at the top of an organization. So imagine us as a sort of board of a company. And the store has 80 people working and turns over £7.5 million a year. So, it's a big organization. The next question is, how do you then roll that out to the whole organization? And what we decided was it was not going to be practical to get the heart and business team to coach all 80 people in the store. So what we did is we advertised internally for internal coaches. And 5 wonderful people applied for that position. And 4 of the 5 are here today. Do you want to raise your hands, guys? And Charm over there. Okay? So these brave people stepped forward and said, I'd like to be a coach and coach my colleagues in the process of getting everybody in their natural flow. So we used Nicholas's technique to help interview, to make sure that they had the natural skills of coaching. And I was a bit anxious. I hoped that there would be, 10 people might apply, and then you get 10 people, you find 5 suitable people. So 5 positions, 5 people applied. And Nicholas ran his work with them, which a lot of it he does remotely on a webinar. And I was in the office that day, and there was such a buzz around as people came out of talking to Nicholas saying, gosh, and I see Shurma smiling there. I remember the conversation her and I had. It was like, oh, this is really, At 2 o'clock, Nicholas rings me up and says, Andrew, all 5 are perfect born coaches. So it's like, whew. They were then coached in this alignment coaching process, and then they were trained on how to coach other people in the process. So that is now mid-process, and your coaching was done, guys, in September, October, and then in November we started the process of coaching other people. So just to give you a bit of context on that, a lot of the people who work in the store have been there for a very long time. So right now, Charm and Shurma, so Shurma's worked with you, 15, 16 years on and off, with a number of maternity breaks for your lovely children. And Charm has worked for us about 7 months now. Okay, so together, those 2 are coaching 3 of our managers, who technically in the old hierarchy are more senior than them, and who have a combined experience of about 50-something years, I think, between them. So that's really quite something, and Charm is going to tell us in a few minutes about his experiences in terms of doing that. So, in fact, Charm, do you want to, let's have that conversation now. So this is Charm. When I went into the coaching meeting a few weeks ago and I said, look, we have this event coming up in London. Would anybody fancy standing up and talk in front of 50 people and talking about their experience? And Charm's hand shot up straight away. So do you want to tell people how you've experienced, what have you learned about yourself, first of all?
It was quite a challenge, actually, because I've never been through anything like this before. And I used to work in several places, and none of the places had something like this. And after that, I saw that advert. I wanted to try for it, and then I went through with Nicholas, and he interviewed me. And then after I was selected, I had to sit with these people who I work with, but I never met a chance to talk to, and all of a sudden I have to share my things in front of these people. It was quite uncomfortable, and first there was sort of a lot of things to digest, but which I couldn't, and we had 6 days, but that was like after 4 days we were so close to each other, and we had more time to think about ourselves think about the business, how we can improve it, and that was really good. And some things about the best part is like I learned more about myself, which I didn't. I mean, I
like
knew,
what did you
but-
learn specifically? Give us an example of something.
It was like I went through the Gallup test, and according to that, I'm like a mechanic. I see where things fit in. I know how a process works. If some part of it missing, I can just see it, and that was really true because I did computer programming, so it's sort of a thing that flows. It's sequence and all of that. So I just applied in the normal life. So I was good at it, and it was pointed out by this Gallup test. So I'm certain like I can do it now. I mean, if you ask me to like talk in front of people before this coaching thing, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't raise my hand. No.
Charm said to me his hand had gone up before he'd realised he'd put it up.
Yeah, it was. I've learned a lot of things through this program. It's really helpful.
And quickly, how is it coaching people who are, in terms of the store, way more experienced than you at the moment, who've been there a long time? How are you finding that?
Yeah, because we started coaching 4 people. 2 of them were managers and 1 of them were like supervisors who worked for like 15, 16 years, I guess. And it was a challenge because I was thinking like, oh, they've been here longer than me. I was here for like 7 months, and I finished the first group yesterday with Surma and me, and they were like really happy about it. End of the program, we gave them paper each and asked them to write the feedback anonymously. Like you don't have to write your name or anything. And the feedback was like we were here doing all of that work in our own departments. We didn't have any time to interact with each other. So because of this program, one person said, "This is the best thing about this program. I can interact with others through this program." And that was one of the managers. I mean, she was like saying to me, like, "You were doing really good, and I'm really glad to be coached by you, because what we do is we just attend to our own things, own roles, and nothing else, and we finish and we just want to go home. But you sort of showed us a new way, so that's kind of good thing."
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Charm. Thank you Charm for standing up. But this, Anita will know because she comes in, and Scott's been, and a few other people. This is a really busy supermarket, okay? Lots of stuff are happening. So these guys are juggling. In fact, today, Shanti kind of ejected me from my little room where I was having a sandwich because, who was it? 2 people were having, Reginald and somebody else were having a coaching meeting in the corridor.
Yeah, none of
Just-
that's coming, right?
Just what? Just because there was like no space, and they're fitting this stuff in amongst running the actual store. So it's not like an office environment where people can, it's really fast moving, and these guys are doing an amazing job.
Can
And
I
I-
just say something?
Yeah.
Finish. When you they came into your office
Yeah.
and they finished their coaching, and I went into the canteen to make tea, and Schumer has just finished and gave the feedback form to Steelen, and he was writing something, and someone else came in and they were chatting in their language, and Schumer's just they were talking in Tamil, which is my language, and they're talking, and Schumer just heard one word and said, "I understood that," and she was asking what they were talking about is Steelen is writing, and the other guy comes and asks, what was it? And he said, he's writing a feedback, and he was asking in Tamil, "Is it really good?" And he said, "Yeah, it's good." And he was asking, "Is it good for you or is it good for the business?" Yeah. And he said, "Oh, it's really good. Do you think I would really do it if it wasn't good for me?" And he was really passionate about it. And yeah, it was really, really... And he also said that, Schumer said, "Oh, you don't need to put the feedback on the name." And he said, "No, I'll just put my name on the feedback form, whether I'm saying good or not." So Yeah, he was. I've never heard that kind of conversation in the canteen.
That's fantastic. And Seelan is the guy who came up to me one day last week. Seelan is very reserved, quietly speaking. I think he's a bit afraid of me, if I'm really honest. I can't think why, but, you know. And he didn't quite hug me, but he came up to me and said, this coaching is so... You know, and he's normally very quiet and reserved, isn't he? So it's really quite transformational. Okay, the other thing is, James, do you want to turn on the projector? I need to get out of the way. So we've got a short video of Shanti being interviewed by one of the Heart and Business team about her experience of doing this, because she said she didn't want to talk publicly, but now she's done such a good job of speaking publicly. James, do you want to?
I always felt like every time I suggest something, I have to justify why I am suggesting. I didn't feel that it had much value, and I didn't feel that people would take me seriously. Even though maybe they were taking it seriously, but I didn't know that they were taking it seriously or not, because I felt that it didn't carry that much weight. Also, I didn't help myself. Because I always, whenever I suggested something, I belittled it by saying something like, I just wanted to say, or this is just my opinion. I always added the word just in the front. I think you noticed it and you pointed it out. Shanti, why are you just saying just every time, every sentence you're starting with just? I didn't even realize I was doing it. The questions that you asked me forced me to look at that and ask myself, why am I doing that? Yeah, a little bit of anticipation, but I was also a little bit sceptical. Oh God, what is this going to bring? I've always felt coaching is for weak people. I didn't feel that it was something for me. But as I did it, through the process, I was forced to face up to what the issues were. No one ever said that to me, why I was doing what I was doing. So that through that processes that I had to face up to those. When I did the strength finding thing, when I found out about what my strengths were, some of the strengths that came out, I thought they were weaknesses. Weakness doesn't mean it's a weakness. I can turn it into something good or something positive. And that gave me confidence to do more. That, okay, yes, I can suggest things confidently now, that knowing, one, that is my strength, two, I have actually done it before without realising that I have done it before. Because I'm doing it much more confidently, I think it come across to the rest of the people, I feel confident what I'm suggesting, so they don't really feel doubtful that it's going to work. When someone else actually pointed out and given me examples of where they actually noticed that strength, was for me, wow. That is great. Yeah. When I'm more of myself, it's easier for me to communicate with others. I can feel how it was for me to realise my power, my strength. It's within me to make myself better. Yeah. Now I've learned, by me being confident, that is coming out as a sunburn. I can be open. Yes, since the workshop, I notice more people are okay to come to me and talk to me. It's completely different with the people who actually had the coaching, and also those people are having a very open relationship with the rest of the team. It's really, really different energy. The other day, I went into the canteen. They're all like, have you had your test? Have you had do you know what your strengths are? I didn't know that. And it was just amazing to listen to people actually talking about themselves and their strength. It's amazing. It's just by people being more aware of what they're doing and being identified with the companies and its goals and how we want to go, how we want to do things. So it's really, really positive, and the energy's great in the store. It's just, I think people see me as not just the bean counter.
Thank you, Shanti. I said we were going to actually live demonstrate this mission alignment process I was talking about. And we have a very generous guinea pig here, Stuart Wallace, who's the head of the New Economics Foundation. Some of you may know him, may have heard of him. And I was sharing this with him a while ago, and I rung him up after and said, look, how would you feel about having your personality and who you are kind of analysed in front of a group of 50 people? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So you were very, very, very willing and very open. And this process, I first met Nicholas and did this about 4 years ago. And some of the things he told me made a lot of sense. But some of them kind of at the time I didn't get at all, but I completely get it now. So he can actually look at things that you're not even aware of. And even at the time, it takes time and you sort of, oh yeah, I really get that now. So without further ado, I'm going to pass across to Nicholas. Stuart, do you want to come up and join Nicholas on the stage, so to speak?
Thank you, Andrew. So I'm going to give you a demonstration of mission alignment work. Okay, so a little bit about my background, so you know that I'm not sort of some sandaled hippie or anything doing this. I used to be in corporate finance in the city, in high-tech satellite communications. So I've gone from that to being in the alternative field, and now I'm sort of returning to combine the two bodies of knowledge to raise consciousness and help people align to their true mission in life. So the mission alignment work is designed at an individual level to align you with your true purpose in life. And we in short, basically we look at your name, and from that we can decode it using the system up here. I won't go into too much detail because we don't have time. But essentially we can get you down to what are your core challenges in life that you're facing, which we all have. What are the core qualities you have to overcome that? What are your primary drives? What are your main dreams in life? And because most people are not aligned to that, you get 87% of the population not particularly happy at work. I call them the grey people when I used to go on the tube into the city. And you've all seen that. And in becoming conscious of those 6 aspects here in both the physical and the spiritual realm of your life, if you consciously work through those, which is what this work is about, you access and can become aligned to your life purpose. Now, we all feel that someone hasn't told us something important in our life. Well, this is the answer here. And so in business, we use this work to align people to their true purpose in life, both at a personal level and a professional level. And then we can also use it to understand the hidden dynamics that run, for example, on the board. From the CEOs and chairmen I've worked with so far, I've managed to analyse the core issue that was gridlocking their entire company. So it's very powerful like that, this deep level of knowledge. So what we're going to do with Stuart is that we're going to find out what makes him tick, and we're going to find out where he wants to go next. Okay, so thank you for bearing your soul, Stuart. So you have a question for me. You have a very big question. So do you want to share that with everybody?
Yeah.
Then we'll start.
My question is, I'm stepping down from full-time work, and my latest job for the last 12 years, running the New Economics Foundation, Economics Think and Do Tank, but I've been working full-time for 45 years. I feel it's time to move to something else. I really want to explore what that other thing is, and particularly, am I crazy to think that stepping out of a very good organisation that's having more and more influence, that I can still play a key role in changing the economic system, because I believe fundamentally the current economic system we're in needs to change. We're living beyond planetary limits before we even talk about inequality, etc. And we can do much better. So I want to explore, A, whether I'm crazy, and B, how I might do this next stage of my life, because I'm certain there's something I've got to do. So I'm interested to explore that.
Okay, so Stuart and I have been through this process previously, so we're going to do a summary of who Stuart is first, and then we're going to answer that question, or what
and we did
next.
it fairly briefly, didn't we? I didn't
Yeah.
quite pose that question before.
Yeah, well now you understood what this could do, now we can answer that question. So, on Stuart's chart here, his physical challenges, have you wanted to be of service to people?
and community and humanity, Stuart?
Yes, I've felt that for certainly the last 30 or so years of my life, but even a bit as a child. I always felt that my role was to make a difference.
Yeah, well, this is both in your chart here in these physical challenges and in these physical qualities here. Okay, so this is saying that basically your main challenge is to use your more conscious, call it spiritual, intuitive flow of your life, spiritual intelligence, to actually serve the world. And do you find that gives you a lot of satisfaction in doing that, rather than just going out and making a pile of money like you used to do?
I used to make I had 6 dependents, and I was running a set of companies, but for various reasons it wasn't working quite right for me. And I took my salary down by 2/3 and swapped my nice Saab Turbo for a bicycle and went to work for Oxfam.
Okay, so
and that was fairly mad with 7 of us to feed and look after.
Yes, so
but it worked.
So Stuart was following his natural inclination, which was to serve humanity, serve people here. And his physical qualities here are designed, sort of latent in us initially, but in going to Oxfam, this brought out his need to serve, and this overcame his challenges here. So he's perfectly matched these two energies. Okay, so Stuart was on the right path. So what age were you when that started to happen?
Well, some of that happened early on because I went from London Business School to the World Bank, and then I went into business. And I went into business partly because I was a single parent with 2 very young kids to look after, and needed to be back in a more settled environment, not travelling the world. But even the World Bank had some sense of wanting to do more, but that became stronger and stronger during my time in business. So the point I actually moved from managing a set of businesses to Oxfam was when I was about 44, 45, that sort of age.
So the physical drives that Stuart has are here to access deep wisdom and leadership from within himself and to expand bodies of knowledge. Would that be the case that you stepped up to lead in your career?
Yeah, I think I mean, I always seem to put myself forward and dive into the next challenge. And even the time, because in Oxfam, I was running Oxfam's programs, Oxfam Great Britain's programs around the world. So we had about 2,500 staff, lots of war zones, lots of struggles to go into. But I always had a belief that we could achieve a lot. But increasingly, even my time in Oxfam, I kept feeling that we were dealing with some of the symptoms and some of the underlying causes really needed tackling, which is why I went on then to the New Economics Foundation and managed that for the last 12 years.
So you learnt a lot about this in spiritual challenges. This is all about learning about the value of, well, self-worth, but also the proper use of money. So you've been exploring that a lot in life.
Oh, huge amount, yeah. And the New Economics Foundation does lots of work on money and on, we're very much arguing that GDP is just a speedometer. It tells you whether you're going faster or slow. It doesn't tell you whether you're going in the right direction. And so very much what we're concerned with is how you increase human well-being and how you live in harmony with the planet. So money is then a means to an end. But interestingly, I think I've been much better at leading from the outside and having a go at things, but quite often I felt very uncertain inside. So this hasn't been just from inbuilt confidence. I'm actually, in some ways, quite a shy, introverted person, and I've sort of learned how to put myself out on a wider stage. But I'm somebody who suffers from a lot of doubt, even though I know. And oddly, I'm sort of can be unconfident on the outside, but actually going through the loss of somebody I loved, very young, to cancer, becoming a single parent, I've sort of got a toughness inside. So when it really comes out, I can go to that sort of inner steel. It's not steel in a nasty way, but I'm that funny mixture of lack of confidence, but when it really comes down to it, confidence that actually we can do the impossible.
Yeah, this is you stepping up to be a leader.
Yeah, but it sometimes feels very wobbly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's not
normal.
It's
normal
not
when you go through this, yeah. So these spiritual qualities here are about building a body of new knowledge that's resonant to Stuart. And I'd say this is the New Economics Foundation building a new philosophy to replace the existing system, which, as we all know, is not working out there. So how's that being, building this new body of knowledge and being supportive of people in terms of getting it out to the world?
Fantastic, but not always easy financially. We're now 70 people, but the actual fun, thing that's kept me awake at night is raising the funds to keep 70 people who are actually challenging the system, because it's easy enough to raise funds for very practical things, but when you're saying something needs to be very different, that thinking around what the next system looks like, looking at the future, is quite difficult to raise funds for. And we've had to be very clever. We've had to be both a radical think tank and a successful consultancy at the same time. So it's trying to keep that balance. But the bit I don't understand is why now, when the time, if anything, as a think tank, our time has come. I've still got energy. It's why I feel driven now to step off into the deep ocean again.
Well,
and that's the bit I don't understand,
well, I think
and where I go next.
I think it's this new structure of knowledge. You're here to take it out into society at a greater level here. This is what this is saying. You're here to ground it, we'll use that term, make it accessible to people. And the product of doing all these things we just described is to empower others with this new structure of economic way of doing things in a different way.
Well, basically a different vision of how we want to live and a new story.
Yeah,
Because I think we've got to create a new story about how we want to live on this planet. And at the minute, we're still stuck in the old story. And we've actually got to create that new story. It's not about going back to something, in my view. It's about finding that next thing. And that's where I'm interested in going. But I don't see myself as a great writer. I can be quite a good speaker, even though I find it nerve-wracking. But I feel, the bit of me feels actually the time has come to write something. I don't know whether I can. So
it's right here. This is about deep communication of a lot of wisdom you have as you feel better about coming out in the world. So there's definitely a writer in here, and this is going to a brand new structure. So let's find out what's the answer to Stuart's question. How are we going to do the next piece? This is the foundation of Stuart's life. So if we do the next slide, James, we're going to talk about what's he going to do with all this after 67 years. How is he going to actually fulfill the rest of his life purpose? Okay, so this is called an overlay chart. This is Stuart's birth chart that creates his life the way it is. And this is the current name he has. And this is going to answer that question. Okay, so what this is saying here fundamentally is that Stuart is going to continue to step up and lead in the world and expand bodies of knowledge, always rushing around trying to do too much.
Yeah.
But I think I've talked to you about that.
Yes.
Go slow down, cut that to-do list in half.
Yes.
But be very...
My partner says more of that as well.
A third. And to be very focused in achieving his goals step by step. But the most important energy here is this 13-4. And this is about being more in the feminine, caring, looking energy of looking after the world, looking after the flow of nature, looking after the environment. This is about working from the heart, and this is here very much about setting clear intention of what you wish to share with the world, and then setting it out in the world and trusting that the flow of that will come. So you're going to take some risks when you do this.
Yes.
So it's going to take a lot of trust to do this, but there's no choice because you've already jumped off the cliff.
I have, yes.
Yeah, actually resigned.
I haven't actually resigned yet,
you
but I
haven't?
haven't told them that. But we got my successor, so I have to resign.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't do that to them.
Yeah. So, and this 15 and the 6 here, this means that Stuart's spending a lot of time in his life trying out lots of different things to work out, well, where am I going to go next with this? So the key with this here is not to sort of think about it too much. This is indicating that you've got to go out and try a few new things on to see how it feels. What does your gut tell you? And when you feel comfortable, you'll find the right thing. So you've got to actually go and try it on as a trial. You can't think your way through this. It's not a left-brain analytical process for you. And this 18.9 here is saying that Stuart's here to project manage, make the hard decisions, and to have the power to carry out those hard decisions and make projects happen and complete them. So I'd say it's going to be a project-based type post-NEF career. Okay, do one project, take a break because you'll probably take a while to learn to not do too much, and then the next project will come along. But very much leading these projects here, being a speaker, a writer, getting the message out there. And each time you do that, you overcome that shyness. But in the end, it will be about taking care of the world sustainably from the heart. That's basically what this is indicating to me, this chart. So how does all that sound to you as a future? Because you asked me, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And
I did ask you that.
big question. So
but it sounds like it's saying that actually, I don't know the exact route, but I've still got quite a role to play in using my experience and what I've learned, and I've always seen myself as there's an expression I grew up with when I was a teenager by an early systems thinker saying, in these days where the rich in knowledge eat such specialized diets from such separate tables, only dogs scavenging under the tables have a balanced diet. And I've always felt that it's really important to learn from many different tables. And so I think it was encouraging me to feel, actually, I've got a role. I'm not mad to think that I can still play a role in changing the economic system. Because it sounds so hubristic. It can sound so sort of overblown. But on the other hand, somebody's got to do it, and I've been blessed with seeing many different sides of this. So I feel I've still got something to contribute. And therefore, probably I'm not destined just to sit down in my beautiful place in North Devon and meditate and things like that. That's going to be a bit of it, but it won't be the whole. So, and that feels
right.
It feels right.
Yeah.
And it feels scary because it'd be much easier just to retire. And
the key for you is to actually be very clear in your heart what you feel is right.
Yeah.
And allow it to come to you.
Yeah.
This is not the normal business approach of chasing opportunities. When it comes, this is just allowing it to come, and when it comes, it'll naturally self-filter.
And certain things have already come, slightly unexpectedly.
And they're the ones you have to accept unconditionally.
Yeah.
Because they'll naturally get filtered out the things you're not meant to do. If you chase something with this sort of chart, it means that it won't work.
Yeah. Because the one thing I chased was becoming a trustee of Oxfam.
Yeah, and what happened there?
It didn't work. And
just allowed.
And I realised why it didn't work, because it was going back.
Yeah.
Okay, was going back in a different. And I really, because I've been a trustee of a lot of organisations, I got lots of management experience, but I actually don't want to run an organisation. I don't even want to be a trustee there. I want to help, I want to inspire and lead in a different way. So it feels like that's really where I am now.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's probably a book in me, even though I'm a useless writer in my view.
It's just practice.
Yeah.
Those who think that I'm not so good, from my own experience, I barely passed English exams, but now I write best-selling books.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why you can't.
No, it's practice like everything else, isn't it? And it's speaking from the heart, isn't it?
It is.
It's saying what I really believe. And yeah, and this feels good as well as...
Feels good?
Yeah. It feels like what my heart's telling me is where I need to go.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah. So what happens here is that if you align to the personal flow which we can decode here, life opens and flows. If we stay on our left brain analytical side, I used to be like this, trying to work out how to spend hundreds of millions of dollars of other people's money. You don't flow with the heart, and life gets very hard and challenging. So if we individually flow with what's in the misalignment work, both individually, and if we actually work out how the dynamics, which is the really exciting part of this, between, say, different board members, which I've done a lot of work on, and if we all go with our natural flow and rearrange ourselves to go to our natural flow and harmonise in our relationships, then that energy in a company from the top down completely changes it. Because people aren't fighting each other. People aren't doing things they don't like doing. And this gives us the actual realistic map for getting to where we want. And this is the power of this work. And then we pass that on to the alignment coaching and work which Eudora does to actually put that whole thing into action. When my first real use of this was a property development company, and they went from 2 to 18 staff in 18 months, and they actually went, in the last 6 months, they increased their profit by 125%. Wow. Because everyone got aligned, and the two partners, one of the main partner, he said, every week someone comes up to me and says, I love my job. Thank you for hiring me. And they can't actually keep up with the demand because the harmonious flow is creating an enormous change in their business. Their issue now is it's expanding too fast. So I'm having to coach them to slow down because they all got an alignment.
Yeah.
So thank you, Stuart, for sharing.
Well, pleasure. Thank you. And
Yeah.
perhaps it'd be nice to sort of, there's other questions and things, perhaps have a further
We can do-
discussion
we can have a small
outside this,
follow-up.
because thank you. That's really great,
Yeah.
though. Thanks, Nick.
Good. Thank you.
Stuart, before you sit down, back to your seat. So how did that feel? How accurate did that feel? The previous discussion you had with Nicholas last week and this.
Oh, very accurate.
Yeah.
And but I'm still absorbing some of it.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that resonates with me, I don't understand the symbols fully,
Yeah.
but this feels like it's sort of got me, and that does feel right. And for me certainly the idea of actually opening to what comes. Now, obviously, I create some of those things, and you've got to have the right judgment which you take and things. But that feels very right now for what I need to do.
Yeah.
And just even since we talked, a couple of things have come out of the air that I wasn't expecting. Like a visiting professorship is actually an outfit that's really interesting, for example. Things like that, and being a trustee of not of an organisation, but of an area of knowledge that the World Economic Forum's taking forward. Things like that just seem to be popping out of the air. And I'm going for the things that interest me and feel right, I can do something with. And some of them will work, some of them won't. I know some will crash, but that doesn't matter, I think. So this feels right. This feels like it's really got who I am. And I'm very impressed. I don't understand it, but I'm very impressed.
Well, it's this thing of when you're in your natural flow, then amazing things happen.
Yeah.
And it's, you could say they're random, but they're not random, because everybody who gets in that flow, it happens. So
No, I don't think these things,
No.
you can argue all this question about how much is destiny, etc., but it always feels to me that the issue in life, you can't necessarily control some of the things that happen to you, like losing my wife at 32, and being a single parent. I raged at the world for a year or so, and I suddenly realised actually I probably can't control those things, but I can control how I react to it. And that little bit of wisdom of actually saying what I can do is how I react to things, what choices I make, how I approach it. And that gave me huge amounts of power, and that stayed with me and enabled me to do all sorts of things since. So this feels very powerful.
Okay, look, thank you. Thanks again. Thank you. The power of this, you can hopefully start to see the power of this, applying this in companies and organisations. If you have the whole board of the organisation in flow and natural flow and doing what they love doing, then you can start to imagine what's possible. So what we're doing in Heart and Business is we're having road tested all this in Thornton's Budgeons. We're just starting. We've got 3 clients who just started work, 2 of which are FTSE 100 companies. One is a bank and the other is a retailer. And I can't tell you what they are now because they're not, the contracts aren't quite signed. To work at board level, getting boards of these companies in the place we're talking about, in a natural flow. And then having done that, then you can start to, individuals can start to have clear what their purpose is. And when the whole board is clear about that, then you can start to create a meaningful purpose for the company. A purpose that is beyond, and one of these companies, and I've disguised but basically their mission is to produce the best, tastiest widget in the high street. But the CEO gets that they're doing really well now, but he gets that that's not a long-term sustainable strategy. and they need to create some sort of higher purpose in their organisation. And if you look at any published data, and James, do you want to put up the keynote chart? One stat I'm going to so Katie's from the B Corporation movement. Some of you may know what a B Corporation is. Do you? Some of you? Yes. Yeah, it's a benefit corporation. Basically, the aim is that they're set up to maximise stakeholder value. Not just shareholder value, but stakeholder being employees, community, environment, and shareholder. And during the 2008 financial crash, B Corps in the States outperformed the Dow Jones average by 83%. Okay, so that's just one simple statistic. Let me give you my own statistics, the Thornton's Budgeons numbers. Okay, so I want to finish with this chart, because at the end of the day, commercial businesses do need to make a profit, a return to exist. So we started off here in the two years ago. You know, the market was pretty flat. We were about flat. As in supermarkets, what happens is a competitor does something. So our Morrison's in Chalk Farm refurbishment, it was an old Safeway, it was a rubbish store, and they suddenly spent millions on it and made it a beautiful store. So our sales tanked by 5%. Do you want to flick on? We then did what I said, the heart program. I didn't talk much about it, but started getting people connecting and being more truthful. And whoop, sales popped up. Go on, James. The price war I told you about then escalated. And we were down in a place at the beginning of this year of 7% down. And final version, right now we're actually slightly positive. We're about 1% up, okay? And that, if you want to put the last bit, James, that's in the context of 4% food deflation. And the whole Budgeons estate actually is down 6%, all right? So we're up 1% and the whole estate is down 6%. So it does work. And this is before we've actually started these guys have really got their coaching rolled out to the whole company. So like 8 sort of people have been affected by this, 8, 10, and then you've got the 8 people you're coaching at the moment that are halfway through the coaching process. So I see that number, continuously growing in a really challenging marketplace. Tesco, Sainsbury, Morrison's, Asda, they're all down. Everybody's down, except Aldi and Lidl. So that, I think that's a really impressive performance, particularly in the sector we operate in. So that concludes our bit. We have a few minutes for question and answer before I pass over to Darshita. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask to anybody, really, any of our team?
I'm just wondering, when you got 80 odd people there, did it push much staff turnover out? Did you lose a lot of people, or did you manage to keep everybody in the process?
Well, it's interesting. When we started the Heart programme, that was a time when we did lose more people that particular year. Mm-hmm. So that was a bit of kind of people. If people aren't comfortable with this sort of work, then you will lose those people. But actually, those people are sitting in this sort of discontented, maybe just. So there will be, in this period. No, we haven't lost anybody almost during this period. But in the early parts, there was a bit, and also there was a lot of unsettlement in the whole marketplace. Everybody was very uncertain, so that might be something to do with it too. But I think there will be. But when you flush this out, and you get people in flow. If they're not meant to be in this river, then it's better if they kind of jump out than trying to, kind of paddle the wrong way up the stream.
And part of what we do is also working with those staff who aren't happy to kind of actually see where they will be happy, to what really suits them.
Scott?
It's a question you and I discussed the last time we were together, Andrew, but as you take this forward, there is a version of the truth for every vested interest. How do you cope with that? For example, if you're talking to a bank.
You cope with that by talking the truth. Okay, so the bank we're talking with are really committed to being a really ethical, professional organisation, and I really get it. I've heard one of the board members who we're working for say that, and I really believe him, and I believe what I've seen. I haven't met the CEO yet, but I've heard him speak. So they genuinely believe that, and when we're working in that environment, it is all about truth and exposing whatever needs to be exposed. And yes, there's a lot of icky stuff, and these guys know there's a lot of icky stuff still in their organisation, but they need to get it out, because otherwise it stays icky. If you get it on the table, then you can kind of deal with it. But if it's kind of stuck, locked away in a cupboard somewhere, it will just leak out and toxicate. But let's, you can ask me that question again in 12 months' time when we're...
No, I didn't mean it as a negative.
No, but it's a good question.
You've just got to look at Volkswagen, the banks all getting fined again,
Yeah.
BAT. You've got to think, are they using this the same way as they use corporate social responsibility reports, in that they spin it this way, but it's actually about this? And I'm not being cynical, I wouldn't be here if I was cynical, but when I hear a bank who are getting fined and they're only getting big fines to stop them going to jail, I do question their judgment, not yours.
I think what you find is in this organisation there's a whole new bunch of people who've been brought in to clean the place up. And this can't be like CSR and window dressing and stuff like that, because that's one of my issues with CSR, is it is kind of PR stuff. Because it's about truth. You can't, the stuff will get exposed. You can't hide in this sort of process. Anita, you were...
Since you pointed me out before as one of your customers, I just wanted to share the change in the shop, because I've been living in Belsize Park 13 years, so before Andrew took over the shop. And it used to be the last place you wanted to go into. You only went there if there was no alternative and you just had to get something. It was dingy, it was dirty, and the selection of stuff was really old-fashioned, and people were so surly. You could never get the smile out of anybody in Budgeons. It was so unpleasant. And it has completely changed. And many of the people are still there, and it's completely changed. Of course, all the merchandise is different also, but just the people in the shop and how they interact with you, and they are happy, and the way they speak to you is extraordinary. So we are all very happy going to Andrew's shop.
Thank you, Anita.
And I've really seen it over this long journey.
Thank you. And I didn't pay Anita to say that. Just one point on this as well. Well, this happens because there's a different energy in the store. People are more positive, they feel more empowered, they take more responsibility. So there's a different sort of energy, and that helps everything flow better. And customers feel it. And Anita is very well articulated, but other people might not be able to articulate. They just know, they come away feeling like a good feeling. And then when they're making the decision, many of it is unconscious about where I'm going to go. In the back of their mind, they know Tesco have just launched a, cheapest, we match Morrison's, blah, blah, blah. But they know, I want to go to Budgeons because, it feels better. Hi, you have a question at the back there.
Yeah, can you say a bit about the hierarchy and the organisational structure that you've got and how it works?
Okay, so at the moment we have a relatively classic hierarchy. Okay, so Jim is the store manager. He has a number of departmental managers, and then there are supervisors. So we have a classic structure still, and the coaching sits alongside that. And there's a sort of debate, which is an ongoing debate, about how that works and what the tension between those two is, and where the old structure is sort of about controlling things, and the new structure is about empowerment. And we're sort of, it's a bit like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. We're in that, we're a bit of in the soup, and at some point a different structure will emerge. But I'm not attached to what that looks like. And for me, one of the key things about this sort of work is you've got to just get on with it if you try to figure out. I read a lovely quote by this American guy running a sausage company. He said, if I tried to figure out how it was all going to look, I'd never start. So I don't know. I have no idea what the structure of our company is going to look like in 12, 18 months' time. But I trust that it will emerge and it will be what we need. So yeah, that's a really good question.
You can kind of see where I'm going from, can't you, in some of the reinvented organisations.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there are organisations that don't, that particularly, I think it's easier to create a new organisation that's created without sort of managers and hierarchy and so on. And I do think that's the direction we need to go. And where's Mr. Holacracy? Yes. So Clement works for, or helps with developing holacracy in organisations. And a lot of that is about, much more team empowerment. So I think that is the direction, but quite how it... And there won't be a set answer. There's not a, this is the way to do it. I believe if you go on the journey, then it emerges. So we started doing this work with the Heart and Business guys at the beginning in January. We didn't know we were going to appoint coaches later in the year. So I don't know, this time next year, I don't know what we'll have done differently. But I trust we're going in the right direction because we're starting to flow a bit more in the river of life. And hopefully we'll have a little bit less of this. So I'd love to come back this time next year and show us sort of a continuous line that looks a bit like that. One more question before I pass to Darshita? Yes?
Just a question about your relationship with some big business that you seem to be beginning to work with.
Yeah.
And how your approach is pretty left field, and how that approach is received in the boardroom.
I think it's very variable, and what we're finding is those that are open to it come forward. So I talk at quite a lot of big events and conferences, and I remember standing at one, those in the grocery, the IGD, the Institute of Grocery Distribution, 250 people, mostly men, mostly in suits. And at that event, there were quite a lot of people who were kind of looking a bit kind of puzzled, but there were enough people in the audience, including this gentleman here, Mr. Blakemore, who got what I was talking about and came up to me afterwards and said, can we talk more? So I think there's a growing cohort in business of people that get this. It's still in the minority, but as more businesses start to say, and Peter runs a very, very progressive business, is doing a lot of this sort of stuff and have done for quite some time. More businesses do that, then competitors start to see what's going on here. So I think, and some people call me naive, that in 10 years' time, all businesses will run this way. Maybe it's going to be 25 years, maybe it's going to be 5. Who knows? So, thank you. It's a really good question. So, Darshita, we're only 2 minutes behind schedule, so we've caught up quite a bit. I pass to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.